All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the current room in the fabulous Baltimore City Hall, and thank you to everyone here and elsewhere for being here today to discuss the state's Consolidated Transportation Program. Secretary Whittlefeld, we appreciate your and the entire team at MDOT's leadership and your continued partnership with the city of Baltimore. As always, I'd like to note how good it is to have a partner in Annapolis who is committed to working with the city of Baltimore, not only the governor and lieutenant governor, but in their cabinet picks as well. And of course, our fabulous state delegation. I know that delegates Robin Lewis and Delegate Edelson are here with us as well. I know that your team has been in constant communication, is constantly working with the Baltimore City DOT team, and your commitment to our city, as well as your understanding the full scope of transportation needs in Baltimore, has made a tremendous impact on DOT's work. We're here today, of course, to facilitate a conversation about exactly that, how our state and city can work together to help deliver on the transportation needs for the residents of Baltimore and the entire region. And before I turn it over to Director Johnson, I want to outline a few things to set the stage. Transportation is one of the biggest policy areas where we're trying to reimagine how our city works. And one of the areas where decades of intentional, targeted disinvestment is over, we must come together to overcome it, and it is very clear that we have to do so. As such, for perspective, the city has an approximately $1.3 billion in capital needs just for maintenance across transportation infrastructure assets. That's $1.3 billion with a B, if anyone didn't hear that. This is one of the areas that we could not only benefit from an increase in state dollars and support, but one of the places where it could have the biggest impact. We were able to utilize these critically important state funds from everything from our world-class port and city road repairs, which are critical to port and functions for everything in Baltimore, to the implementation of Vision Zero initiatives, because despite fewer commuters, rates of speeding and serious accidents are increasing, as everyone knows. It seems that after COVID, everyone just decided to drive like a fool. To starting critical infrastructure projects like, of course, the removal of the highway to nowhere and the replacement of the regionally important Hanover Street Bridge. And although the city was successful in advocating for the reversal of the longstanding cut to our highway user revenue allocation, which increased funds beginning in fiscal 24. Thank you very much. The fact remains that more than a decade-long cut resulted in the city losing over $900 million in transportation revenue. And we've been joined also now by Council Members Dorsey and Ramos. Thank you very much for joining us. Overcoming Baltimore's current transportation challenges and building a future that works for Baltimore's residents, regardless of what neighborhood they live in and what mode of transportation they choose to take, is going to take partnership in every level. We must ensure that we are doing everything in our power to ensure federal funding is distributed in an equitable manner in which the state can assist with by expanding the eligibility criteria for Chapter 30 projects. We all know about MTA's capital needs and inventory published in July 19, identifying a $2 billion gap split evenly between the state of good repair and system enhancement needs. I will say that I think I'm going to have to get on the subway for the first time in a long time with the new trains, because, you know, I rode the train almost every day in high school, and the trains were the same since the train back. The new ones are the first ones ever, if my memory serves me correct. Tackling these priority projects will not only serve our communities with an end of reliable, comprehensive transportation system that serves the needs of all users, they'll create jobs and help build economic security right now in our communities. I know that you share my feeling that Baltimore City and the entire region is at a crossroads moment, and I'm looking forward to continuing and deepening that partnership to make sure that we're building 21st century transportation here in Baltimore, in our region, and across our state. And with that, I'll say thank you and turn it over to Director Johnson.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Corinne Johnson, and I'm the director for the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. I would like to thank Mayor Scott, Secretary Wiedefeld, and his team, as well as our local and our state elected officials who took their time out of their busy schedules to be here for this important meeting this afternoon. I want to reiterate Mayor Scott's point that investing in Baltimore City's transportation network and infrastructure is critical to the economic well-being of not just Baltimore, but the state of Maryland. We are excited that you are here to discuss MDOT's Consolidated Transportation Program, or the CTP, and how it relates to Baltimore City's critical transportation needs and priorities. Baltimore City DOT continues to build a strong partnership with MDOT. Of particular note is our vibrant relationship with MDOT MTA. This collective effort has been vital towards maintaining a great level of collaboration, which has resulted in us winning a number of important grants as co-applicants, including the previously awarded $50 million US DOT RAISE grant for the East-West Transit Corridor improvements. The improvements along this 10-mile urban corridor will include transit signal priority, pedestrian improvements, dedicated bus lanes, and other accessibility improvements that will stand to benefit Baltimoreans for years, let's say decades to come. We also collaborated to win a $6 million RAISE grant for the redevelopment of Penn Station in the heart of Baltimore City. And these dollars will go towards pedestrian safety improvements, aligning with the city's ongoing efforts to promote safe alternative modes of transportation. By partnering together, we also secured a $20 million federal grant to upgrade transit and pedestrian infrastructure at the heavily utilized Mondawmin Station, and recently secured official state transit-oriented development designations for Penn Station and the Reisterstown Plaza Metro. The City Council has also adopted legislation needed for us to pursue additional state TOD designation for the Penn, North Metro, and North Avenue Light Rail stations. And our hope is that MDOT will encourage the state's smart growth subcabinet to respond and support accordingly. City DOT and MTA are actively collaborating on the recently awarded Reconnecting Communities grant, which we're calling West Baltimore United, colloquially known as the Highway to Nowhere. Active collaboration includes partnership in developing a robust community engagement plan while integrating the Red Line Transit Project into this larger reimagining of the US 40 corridor. This partnership is helping to ensure that the City DOT's Reconnecting Communities approach and our activities are seamlessly integrated with MTA's Red Line project planning timeline. And in my new role as Director for DOT, my top priority is to greatly improve how easy it is for citizens to move around the city via the transportation mode of their choice and to help them do so safely. As we strive to improve mobility in Baltimore, we must continue to work together to ensure that the Baltimore metropolitan region, the region as a whole, has a robust transportation system. So I thank you today for taking the time to participate in this important discussion, and I'm now pleased to introduce MDOT Secretary Paul Wiedefeld. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Johnson, and thank you, Mayor, for those comments earlier. I think we have a very strong partnership. Your staff is fantastic, and we're working through a lot of issues with them, so thank you. Paul Wiedefeld, Secretary of Transportation, and we're glad to be here to discuss the 24 through 29 capital program. With me today is Maryland Transit Administrator Holly Arnold, all the way to the left there, State Highway Administrator Will Pines, Maryland Transportation Authority Joey Sagel, Motor Vehicle Administration Chrissy Nizer, Maryland Aviation Administration Ricky Smith, and from the Maryland Port Administration Acting Executive Director Brian Miller. Governor, there you go. Mayor, Mayor, I wanted to thank you. You don't want that one, huh? Mayor, I wanted to thank you for meeting with us at Medco during the summer. It's a great opportunity for us to have some open discussion about issues for the city and obviously for the department. So thank you and your staff for being there. It is a new day at Maryland DOT in terms of our partnership and transparency. And that is our focus. And we're obviously going to meet the governor's goals of social equity, environmental protection, and sustainable communities is a huge focus for us. We've made some progress in a number of these areas, but we have a lot of work in front of us as well. From a department perspective, our number one priority is always going to be safety. Safety of our employees, safety of our contractors, and safety of everyone who uses the system, our services, and our facilities. As you know, we're committed to Vision Zero, as is the city. And Chrissy and I will talk a little bit more about that, but unfortunately it's not going in the right direction, and we need to do more. So I have directed the staff to take a new look at some of our policies, some of our regulations, some of our design standards to see where we can improve to make sure we're keeping people safe. The other thing I've also asked them to do is take a look at our complete streets policy. which has not been revised in over a decade, and particularly since that focuses on the most vulnerable users of our system, pedestrians and bicyclists. So we have that underway now. Our second priority, obviously, is to preserve the system, the multi-billion-dollar investment that the state and the citizens have made across all modes that we manage. And then finally is to enhance the system, where there's opportunities to support communities like the Red Line, to support economic development like the Red Line, and basically meet the environmental goals like the Red Line. So we will continue to do that, and the governor, as you know, announced that earlier this year. We've also started discussions with the MARC system to increase train ridership between Delaware and Virginia. Again, that brings the regions together and offers opportunities for the people of Baltimore. And then finally, as you know, President Biden did commit with Amtrak for the new Frederick Douglass Tunnel, which we are now partnering on as well. We're also looking to work with other state agencies and local jurisdictions and the private sector to create inclusive economic opportunities by leveraging underutilized transit stations and turning into unique community-focused transit-oriented development. We partnered with MEDCO and issued 2 requests for proposals to study TOD opportunities. One study will examine opportunities along the MARC Penn Line. The other will study innovative ideas to support investment around light rail and subway stations in the Baltimore region. One other priority for us, and it's relatively new, but it's now part of our world, is climate change. And how do we build a resilient system to support all those things that are changing around us, particularly in our most vulnerable communities? One other area I did want to bring to your attention, as we look to build a more equitable transportation network, we also are working towards making Maryland a more equitable state for everyone to do business. MDOT is conducting the state's latest disparity study, where the purpose is to determine whether and to what extent discrimination impacts businesses in the Maryland marketplace. We need your help in spreading the word to all businesses, including small, minority, and disadvantaged businesses, who engage in this study. Currently, you can do so by going online to stateofmarylandddisparitystudy.com and taking a survey. And I think Delegate Bridges, who now is an assistant secretary at MDOT, is leading that effort. As we create a transportation system that connects Marylanders to life's opportunities and works as a true multimodal system for all across a connected network of transit, roads, bridges, and trails, this administration has been listening and partnering over the last several months, and we heard you. We need to provide a more balanced investment portfolio to meet the needs of all Marylanders. Creating our transportation network of the future while preserving and maintaining existing services in our multi-billion-dollar infrastructure will take tremendous investment. Our transportation network must also compete economically on a regional, national, and global level. Frankly, Mayor, we need to invest at a level that's greater than current resources provide. As you know, our key funding source is the Transportation Trust Fund. There are many funding pressures on that trust fund. Historic inflation impacting labor and materials, which I'm certain the city has gone through as well. In effect, the using of all the COVID dollars that we got, particularly for transit, both in Baltimore and Washington, over several $billion dollars, as those dollars are drying up. We are also impacted by the sustainability of motor fuel tax and the fuel, as cars become more fuel efficient and as we move to electric fleet. That's great on a number of levels, but from a financial perspective, with the trust fund, the motor fuel is over 20% of our revenues. So as that dries up, we need to deal with that issue. Titling tax, similar, is very flat, if not going down, and that's because we have cars being built that last much longer and people are keeping them longer, which is, again, fantastic, but from a financial perspective, it's another issue we must address. We're going to have to make some difficult decisions delivering the needs and desires of today's users, as well as meeting our economic goals, given those financial conditions. We're fortunate that we do have this historic opportunity to compete for federal funding under the bipartisan infrastructure law, but we have to keep in mind that it takes state dollars to match those dollars. And particularly when you're a competitive market, you have to make sure you have that lined up to do that. All of this is evident in our draft fiscal year 24-29 CTP that we're presenting today. It totals $21.2 billion and includes everything that was in the final CTP of last year, but it's not fully funded. We have a $2.1 billion hole, which starts in fiscal year 25. This overall shortfall does not include additional investments we need to deliver a better transportation system for the people that the people want and deserve. In the past, MDOT would have made cuts or delayed projects on their own. We've decided to take a different path. We think we should do this in concert with the stakeholders throughout the state. Decisions about how we prioritize our projects should be based on our shared values and priorities and need to be part of a public discussion and need to be done in partnership with our many stakeholders. I know you also count on highway user revenues. You brought that up, Mayor, and I know that's another issue that needs to be addressed as well. This is why the Maryland Commission on Transportation Revenue and Infrastructure Needs is critical. The commission, which was created by legislation from the past legislative session, will examine the Transportation Trust Fund's revenues and look for opportunities to modernize MDOT and the state's transportation system. The diverse commission includes public officials, business leaders, advocates, and several transportation representatives. The commission will have an interim report with some recommendations to the governor by January 1st, 24, and a final report by January 25. What I'd like to do now, Mayor, is have the different administrations give an update from their perspective, and then we'd be glad to take any questions or comments. Thank you, sir. Holly Arnold?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Secretary Wiedefeld. I almost feel like I don't need to go. The mayor stole so much of what I'm going to share with you guys today. But good afternoon. My name is Holly Arnold. I'm the administrator of the Maryland Transit Administration. And I appreciate the opportunity to share just a little bit about what MTA is doing to support frequent, reliable, and easy-to-use transit throughout Maryland. Public transit is essential to ensuring economic and social mobility, addressing the climate crisis and needed reductions in carbon emissions, as well as reducing congestion and promoting safer and healthier streets for our entire region. Maryland's investments in new transit infrastructure and maintaining our systems in a state of good repair will make a difference in people's lives throughout the state. I'd like to highlight a few of the exciting projects currently underway at MTA. In the Baltimore region, as mentioned, we are relaunching the Red Line, a much-needed project that addresses a major gap in east-west transit service. We released maps of the 6 proposed alternatives, and we're looking forward to our next round of public engagement scheduled for early November. To provide expanded travel options for riders as the plans take shape for the Red Line, we launched the Quick Link 40 in late August. This limited stop bus route saves approximately 25 minutes of travel time for riders who currently use the CityLink Blue and Orange lines. We're also in the process of undertaking a major bus electrification effort, with MTA's first electric buses on site and being tested before entering revenue service later this year. On the commuter rail side, we're focused on MARC service expansion, which includes closing that MARC SEPTA gap and adding run-through service into Virginia. We're also partnering with Amtrak to replace the BMP tunnel with the new Frederick Douglass tunnel here in Baltimore. And that includes committing to transitioning to fully electric operations on the Penn line, which will reduce emissions and speed up travel time. It also includes the replacement of the West Baltimore MARC station with a modern, fully accessible station that will connect with existing bus service and with a future Red Line. We're currently updating the MARC Growth and Transformation Plan, which will be taking place over the next year and outline major investments for the vision of that service. We released a survey last week. I encourage everyone to share their thoughts and share with your constituents so we can get a good round of engagement on that. Here in Baltimore on the local rail side, we are nearing completion of the midlife overhaul of our light rail fleet, and we're starting the process to replace those aging light rail vehicles with modern, accessible vehicles. As the mayor mentioned, we're underway with a complete replacement of the metro vehicles and train control system, and just last month, the first set of our test rail cars arrived on site. We invest over $1 billion annually in transit in the Baltimore region because transit is key to a thriving community. Our ridership has continued to rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly here in the Baltimore region. Each day, over 145,000 riders board MTA buses in Baltimore City, and that number has grown by 20% over the past year. We're focused on operational improvements and capital improvements in our system to increase reliability and contribute to a better rider experience. Addressing the many workforce challenges facing the public transit industry, including a historically challenging hiring environment, is a primary focus for the agency. We've significantly stepped up our efforts to hire, train, and onboard new employees while increasing wages and ensuring competitive pay. So this is just a small sample of the important work happening at MTA. We are committed to improving and growing transit throughout the region. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and I'd like to turn it over to Will Pines from the State Highway Administration.
Thank you, Holly, and good afternoon, everyone. As was mentioned, I'm Will Pines, and it's great to be here with you this year, this time as the Administrator for State Highway. Under my leadership, SHA will continue to advance infrastructure projects that will connect Marylanders to jobs and economic opportunities. Building and maintaining a multimodal transportation system for all users that is safe, equitable, and balanced, that's our goal. That means we're going to reimagine how our highway network supports the needs of our communities. We will be putting greater focus on safety statewide because one lost life is one too many. And so we're going to be taking a holistic approach on safety, and that includes honing in on asset safety, work zone, and vulnerable user safety. This spring, SHA released Maryland's first Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, or what we refer to as the PSAP plan. That is a new data-driven tool to enhance pedestrian and bicycle safety for communities across the state. We're making significant investments to deliver PSAP projects, working with our new active transportation team and with SHA's district offices. We're also taking a fresh look at organizational efficiency. I've asked the SHA team to focus on project delivery, permit approvals, procurement timelines, and to look at opportunities to streamline the processes while maintaining ethics and doing good business. This will focus both on delivering SHA projects faster and conducting timely reviews and support for county, city, and developer projects and permits. We realize there are challenges ahead, but that doesn't mean that our goals have changed. We will continue to improve safety, accessibility, mobility, and state of good repair. We have to be poised together to leverage every available federal dollar so that we can deliver as much as we can. This includes pursuing multiple grant opportunities. We will also continue to work with you to deliver local projects. Partnership with our local governments and the community is the key to our mutual successes. Here in Baltimore City, we continue to collaborate on federal grant opportunities. Recently, a $1 million Transportation Alternatives Grant was awarded for the completion of 8 intersection upgrades at Pratt Street from Light Street to President Street. This will include pedestrian upgrades and bicycle wayfinding signs. Last month, Governor Moore announced more than $25 million in federal and state grants for 40 bicycle, pedestrian, and trail projects across Maryland. MDOT's Kim Lippier Bikeways Network Program awarded $300,000 for design of a 3/4-mile segment along Boston Street between Elwood and Conklin Streets through MDOT's Kim Lippier Bikeways Network Program. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Joey Sagel.
Thank you very much, Will. And greetings, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Joey Sagel, and I was named Executive Director of the Maryland Transportation Authority, or the MDTA, in August of this year. Financed by toll revenue, the MDTA is the independent state agency that finances, owns, operates, preserves, and secures Maryland's 8 toll facilities. We're investing those toll dollars right back into our world-class infrastructure for all Marylanders. The MDTA's commitment to maintaining Maryland's toll roads and bridges is paramount, as well as doing our part to watch over millions of souls traveling our roadways each day. I'd like to talk about some of the projects that keep Baltimore City residents connected every day. Bear Creek. In the area of I-695 in Sparrows Point near Bear Creek in Baltimore County, in June, we advertised the I-695 Repair and Subgrade Rehabilitation Project. We'll award that project this fall and begin construction in early 2024. I-895, all electronic tolling, or AET conversion. MDTA continues converting our legacy facilities to highway speed all electronic tolling, the last being that I-895 Baltimore Harbor Tunnel facility. The request for qualifications for the design build project is expected to advertise this fall. I-95 ETL Express Toll Lane Northbound Extension Program. The MDTA is investing $1.1 billion in the I-95 ETL project to add 2 northbound express toll lanes north of Maryland 24 into Harford County. Work is underway for the new toll lanes from north of Maryland 43, White Marsh Boulevard, to south of Maryland 152, Mountain Road, and the reconstruction of the I-95 and Maryland 152 interchange. A project to add an auxiliary lane on northbound Maryland 24 from Maryland 924 through Singer Road was advertised in spring of 2023. We expect to advertise the reconstruction of northbound I-95 from north of Maryland 24 to Bynum Run in winter of this year. Reconstruction of the I-95 Maryland 24 interchange will advertise next year. The extension is expected to open the 1 to 152 by the end of 2024, and then the full extension, the second phase of that north of Maryland 24 by the end of 2027. We know that for many Marylanders, crossing the Bay Bridge to get to the Eastern Shore is a very big part of their lives. So talking about our Bay Bridge Crossing Tier 2 study, this $28 million Chesapeake Bay Bridge Crossing study, NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, is having us analyze alternatives for providing adequate capacity, access, and improving travel reliability, mobility, safety across the Bay, as well as that US 5301 corridor. We've held numerous public engagement activities through summer of 2023. Nothing like a federal queue in the background. So funny, sorry. And heard Marylanders are frustrated with congestion at our Bay Bridge and want relief from traffic jams that occur year-round. We've heard and continue to hear everyone. To address concerns, we plan to share alternatives with the public in 2024, followed by MDTA's recommended preferred alternatives in 2025, and a conclusion of this Tier 2 study in winter 2026 into the year 2027. Details about this study and additional opportunities to provide input are available online, and we certainly encourage that input at baycrossingstudy.com. When you think of the Maryland Transportation Authority, you may think our responsibility ends once the bridge is crossed or the light at the end of the tunnel becomes visible. Our customers' toll dollars support so much more. The MDTA keeps our customers connected to life's opportunities, where we will continue to be an agency dedicated to innovative solutions that improve connectivity, create opportunity, enhance safety, promote equity, and support economic development. Thank you again for the opportunity today to share, and I'd like to turn it over to Administrator Chrissy Nizer at the MVA.
Thank you, Joey, and it's a pleasure to be with you again today. Customer service has always been a top priority for us, and over the last several years, we've had a major IT modernization that really has enabled us to take our customer service to the next level. Gone are those days where you might need to bring a book with you to entertain you while you're at the MBA. In fact, at the Baltimore City branch office, our wait time was under 10 minutes last year. Appointments are available the same day or certainly for a time at your convenience. And you can actually get those appointments within 1 hour, leaving some travel time. But we're also thinking about what's convenient for our customers, and part of that is providing really a one-stop shop for government services. Baltimore City is a great example in that, where we provide birth certificate printing services for individuals who need to get that ID card or driver's license. Baltimore City was actually where we launched that, and since that happened in 2020, we've actually provided 2,000 birth certificates for individuals. They got their MBA services, but they also walked out with a birth certificate they can use for other purposes. We recently announced the expansion of the driver's license manual and law test into 17 different manuals. That'll include American Sign Language, and we're also translating that material into plain language to make sure it's accessible to all of our customers. But we know that accessibility doesn't end at the branch office, so we continue to provide more online services for customers' convenience. Last year, more than 75% of our transactions were actually completed outside of that traditional branch office relationship. We're also really proud of some of the outreach we're now doing in the community, and one of those includes the Food Project. As you know, a nonprofit in West Baltimore reached out to us the end of last year. And since then, our outreach team visits them on a monthly basis. We provide the learner's permit test for young people who are interested in getting that. We also provide networking for ID card services, a really good partnership that we're so proud of at the MBA. As the Secretary mentioned, safety, we are committed to working to reach that goal of zero fatalities that I know you share. Last year, we lost 46 people in Baltimore City. Certainly, we know that number is unacceptable, and unfortunately, this year, we're seeing that number rise to a level that we have not seen since 2007. So we might actually break that 600 number, and I know it's a number, but those are people behind each and every one of those crashes. As the mayor said, speed is certainly one of the major factors that we're seeing that are causing the crashes, but we're also seeing impairment, distraction, and lack of wearing seatbelts. Really consistent for what causes crashes in prior years, but unfortunately the behavior has really gotten to a level that is alarming. And so we're calling on all Maryland drivers to really heed our warning and follow those safety tips that we all learn as we're new drivers. We're also really emphasizing seatbelt awareness because that is one of the key factors we see, especially in back seats, people still not buckling up. Unfortunately, Baltimore City does have a low seatbelt use as you compare to other jurisdictions at 86%, so it's something we'd be glad to partner with you on some outreach just to get that message out as a reminder. In September, Governor Moore did announce more than $1.8 million in highway safety grants. That includes law enforcement agencies in the city, as well as Baltimore Metropolitan Council, one of our good partners, Morgan State University, Bikemore, the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services. And I really would like to thank Baltimore City for your good work in putting together a local strategic highway safety plan. I know it's one of those things that's a constant ongoing effort, but we really do believe it makes a difference in coming together and really bringing all the partners to the table. One of the new tools we have to help in that effort is our crash dashboard, which is now live with fatality data. It is real time, and you can drill down by location, type of crash, a lot of good information there. We'll continue to work with all of our partners and any assistance that we can provide at the Highway Safety Office. We're happy to work with you in that regard. As I close, I just want to take a moment to thank our great MVA employees, because truly we can't accomplish all the wonderful things that I mentioned without their wonderful work. And now I'm going to toss it over to Ricky to talk about the good things that MAA is doing.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Ricky Smith, Executive Director, CEO of the Maryland Aviation Administration. It's good to see you here this afternoon. So the Maryland Aviation Administration plays a critical role. The entire system plays a critical role in supporting travel, tourism, and economic development. Governor Moore has spoken about the great assets we have in the state of Maryland that will ensure dynamic, growing economy for the long term. These important assets include our public use airports across the state that generate jobs and connect residents and businesses to the global economy. One of those important airport assets is, of course, BWI Marshall Airport, which serves as a major transportation resource and economic engine for the state with an economic impact of over $9 billion annually. In terms of passenger traffic, BWI Marshall is currently at about 90% of full capacity, full recovery from following the pandemic. Looking ahead to the fourth quarter, airline seat capacity is up 17% from last year, and more significantly, 3% higher than the same period in 2019 prior to the pandemic. We continue to welcome new airline partners and growing international and domestic air service. We're committed to working every day to make our facilities the most efficient, user-friendly airports for our customers. The Maryland Aviation Administration capital program continues at historic high levels with a 6-year program of over $1 billion. We forecast over $330 million in capital spending for this year, with further growth in fiscal year 2025 to reach about $350 million. It's notable that we are successfully leveraging federal dollars to support our capital needs. Thanks to our federal delegation, we have over $280 million in anticipated federal funds programmed in the draft CTP. Throughout our CTP program, the capital program, we are advancing important projects that will enhance BWI Marshall for our passengers and provide important facilities for our partners. These critical improvements will shape BWI Marshall for decades to come. So MA continues to support 34 public use airports that serve communities across the state. For the statewide aviation grants program that provides important support, thanks to Secretary Whitefeld, MA intends to administer over $3.6 million in federal funding during fiscal year 2024 for regional airports across the state. This includes $16,000 in funding for Pier 7 heliport pad to support security gate construction. So again, thank you for being here, and I will now turn it over to Brian at the MPA.
Thanks, Ricky. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Brian Miller, Acting Executive Director for the Maryland Port Administration. During the MACO conference in August, Governor Moore talked about Maryland being the headquarters of the 21st century, with business ready to dominate and a labor force ready to drive growth. with resources like the Port of Baltimore. The Port of Baltimore is ready to assume that role. The port has rebounded strongly from the devastating supply chain impacts of the pandemic on the international maritime shipping industry. We set a record in fiscal year 2023, handling 11.6 million tons of general cargo, and we're currently up over last year's roll-on, roll-off, and container records. To ensure we can maintain our current level of operations at the port, we are spending about $151 million on system preservation in fiscal year 2024. Our system preservation dollars go to maintaining our state-of-the-art public marine terminals, which includes our cargo warehouses, berths, roadways, and our dredge material containment sites. We're also moving forward with our berth reconstruction project at Dundalk Marine Terminal. Baltimore handles more roll-on, roll-off cargo than any other U.S. port, and we're renovating those berths to better accommodate the larger and heavier pieces of farm and construction machinery now being manufactured. As I mentioned earlier, containers are up 7% over last year's record year. In August, we handled our biggest ship, the Evergreen Evermax, which can hold over 15,000 20-foot containers. Our public-private partner, Ports America Chesapeake, is investing more than $530 million into equipment technology to improve efficiencies in and out of Seagirt. The CSX Howard Street Tunnel project is underway, which will give us the ability to handle double-stacked intermodal container trains to and from the Port of Baltimore. It will grow our business by about 160,000 jobs annually. 160,000 containers annually, and generate about 13,000 new jobs. The current schedule projects to have us completed by 2027. As most of you know, the entire cruise industry shut down because of the pandemic in 20 and 21. We are proud to report that all cruise ships leaving from the Port of Baltimore are now back to sailing at full passenger capacity. We just welcomed back Norwegian Cruise Line for a fall and winter schedule, and are happy to have Carnival and Royal Caribbean offering year-round cruising. You can sail from Baltimore to the Bahamas, Bermuda, Caribbean, as well as New England and Canada. The Port of Baltimore is Maryland's port. Right here in Baltimore City, companies like Hydro Aluminum Metals, Ace Logistics, and Global Business Link ship their products to the Port of Baltimore. Thank you for the opportunity to brief you on the Port of Baltimore this afternoon, and I'll turn it back to Secretary Wiedefeld.
Thank you, Brian. As you can see, we have a lot going on at the department, a lot of activity for Baltimore City with the Baltimore region, which supports, again, where we want to be as a state and as a city. So, Director Johnson, turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. So at this point, we will allow some questions. We'll start with our state delegation first. So I'll turn it over to Delegate Young. If you have anything? Nothing for you? Delegate Rosenberg?
What is the schedule for, I know they're going to be the next round of public hearings with the red line are, say, November 9th, I believe it is, at the Snapper Park. What's your next step after that? Thank you.
Sorry, you got up here to the mic. So our next round of public outreach is in early November. So there we're going to be sharing the measures of effectiveness for each of the different alternatives. So basically ridership, travel time, cost, time to implement, and getting feedback on that. So we're doing a survey that's going to last during the month of November. Then we're going to take all that data back, that information, the feedback that we get, and over the several months from there, have lots of internal discussions, take a look at like what is most likely to get funded at the federal level, and then the goal is to have a kind of preferred alternative in early 2024.
During the legislative session? Question mark? Yes. Thank you.
All right. So Delegate Lewis?
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, all the directors and administrators. Thank you for being here today. Thanks for all your hard work and for believing in our city and our state. I have so many questions, but I'm going to just ask one. Director Johnson, you mentioned something about light rail station upgrades. You referred to Mondawmin Metro Center upgrades. I think that was you. And you also talked about the rollout of the Highway to Nowhere initiative. So I'm just wondering if you would provide a little bit more detail about the timeline for when those projects will get done.
Okay. Well, I'll speak on the West Baltimore United, and then I'll let Holly speak more on the Mondawmin. So with the West Baltimore United effort, we're still working with our federal partners on the formal grant execution. But we have been all along collaborating with MTA and doing other efforts on it. We are going to be rolling out our next phase of community engagement here towards the end of this year. And then we will be having the internal agency type of stakeholder group, as well as that external community interest group that we'll be working with. So there will be some, we kind of went through a little bit of time trying to get that new grant execution out there, and so we kind of held back on giving a formal timeline until we knew we had that in hand. So as soon as we get that signed, sealed, and delivered, then we will be giving a formal, more realistic timeline for everyone. But again, for everyone's awareness, it is a planning study. So that is just like typical like that 2-year time frame for the planning study. And then we'll be looking at the next phases for additional funding to do the formal design and then ultimately construction. You're welcome.
I feel like I should just stay up here. And no, I just want to thank the city for their partnership on the Mondawmin project. So it's a $20 million grant. We partnered with the city. We have a federal RAISE grant for this. Because it's a RAISE grant, it's also a fairly complicated timeline for getting the actual grant award from FTA. So we get the award, and then you have to go through this paper grant process. It's very complicated. That said, we're not really waiting for that. We're starting now. We're starting to work with the team to identify what the full scope for the project is, what we think we can do for that. What we asked for and what we received is a little bit different, and so we're kind of taking a look at, how far out can we go in terms of the safety improvements, pedestrian improvements to that Mondawmin station. But I mean, it is the key hub for us, and so as much investment as we can put in there is really critical to making transit across the entire region better.
Last week I saw the elevators were being improved. Is that part of the RAISE grant or something else?
That is a separate project, and so the elevator has gone on a little bit longer than what we expected, but we are still targeting the end of the year to have those elevators reopened and so that folks can have a fully accessible station again.
2 questions. First and foremost, thank you all so much for your presentations. It is so refreshing to hear the value statements and the goals and missions of all the agencies, and I know that you all mean it, which is really wonderful. First question, Secretary, you'd mentioned looking at making the CTP process more transparent and open. I'm wondering if you can give us any context or ideas that you might have on that, and I'm happy to let you take that and then
On that one, I've been involved with this business for a long time, and a lot has not changed in decades. So I think we need to take a hard look at how we prioritize limited dollars, and that's going to be, it can't be internal. It's got to be an external process to do that, and particularly as values have changed, right? What we have as values. So we got to make sure we have a program that supports that, and not only on the capital side, but on the operating side as well, because almost half of our dollars go into operating services as well. So I think that's what we're talking about here. The Needs Commission I mentioned earlier, they've been going down that path as well. So I would not be surprised if that came out as one of the early recommendations, is let's do that process. It's not something that you do overnight if you do it right, because if we do it, we could do it very quickly. But the real key is to do that with a lot of stakeholders. So I think you'll be seeing more of that in the new year.
Excellent, thank you. The second question I had is you mentioned environmental goals and the importance of reducing vehicle miles traveled, greenhouse gas emissions, so we can achieve our climate goals and have a planet that future generations, including my 4-month-old son, will be able to live on. My question for you on that is how you see the implementation of the current CTP, the proposed CTP, in achieving those goals of greenhouse gas reduction.
I think you have to take a look at the entire budget of the department. We spend 63% of our operating budget on transit in this state, I think, which is the commitment that we're making, the state is making, the communities are making, to basically provide opportunities to deal with some of those core issues by providing good alternative modes of transportation. Clearly, with the commitment from the governor to basically move toward the electrification of all the fleet across the state is another big part of that, to do that. And we'll continue that. We're taking advantage of as many federal grants as we can in that area, because that's an area where we can compete at, I think, very well. So we'll continue to do that. But hopefully you also heard, again, from all the administration, and it's not only the traditional surface transportation. So for instance, we're looking at electrifying at the Port of Baltimore. And I know that Ricky is on the airfield. So it's things of that nature as well. So it's just not just the highway portion of it, which obviously is huge and the major contributor, but we got to look at this holistically, and that's what we're going to do.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I have more questions.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Because it really is, as the delegate said, it really is a delight to be with a group of public servants working in the transportation space who actually want to deliver, for our city and region. It means a lot. I've been traumatized at some of these earlier CTPs. So this is great. I appreciated one of you echoed the governor's words about Maryland being the headquarters of the 21st century. Thank you, Mr. Miller. I think about that a lot, because to achieve that, there's a lot of things we have to do, all of us. And I'm wondering how we think creatively about financing that vision for our future. I know there, like the Secretary mentioned, there's a commission thinking right now, working really hard to figure out how we pay for all the things that we need. And I wonder, to the extent that all of you have any input into this, and to the extent you're thinking about this, sir, is value capture a part of the conversation? And just to make sure to level set, value capture, the idea is that you leverage the assets you have to generate revenues that pay for things like operations, like state of good repair. One of you also mentioned the 2019 study that determined a $2 billion backlog in Maryland's state of good repair. And how are we paying for that? If indeed 63% of our transportation budget goes to transit, and yet we're not delivering the high quality, the frequency, the reliability that we need, how are we going to get to the point where we're paying for that? So help us understand. Thank you.
Obviously, you hit the biggest challenge that we're facing, right? Is how do we do that with limited dollars, right? So I think part of it gets back to how do we prioritize the dollars we do spend. And again, that's why I bring up the operating side of the equation, because of the total budget we have. It's almost 50-50, operating versus capital. So I think we've got to start there, is looking at the entire budget and how do we prioritize it. I think the governor's also given us the direction and really demanded the department, all the cabinet members, to work together to think through, particularly how do we become, Maryland's decade. It can't be us working in our own little silos. So for instance, we're working with corrections, we're working with labor, we're working with health, to think differently about what we do and how do we support these other goals and other missions of other agencies within state government. I think that can also turn into some of the financing issues here. Another area, obviously, is with the electrification of the fleet. How do we deal with that? When, in effect, as I mentioned earlier, our motor fuel tax supports so much of this. Do we entertain something on that in that area? Is another area that has been talked about. I think we've got to be very careful when we do that, particularly in the mid-Atlantic, when we're surrounded by other states, and if they pursue different alternatives, we've got to make sure we don't put ourselves at a disadvantage. So, for instance, if we were to put some sort of fee on an electric vehicle, and if Delaware is lower or Virginia is lower, we will have a lot of people buying cars in Delaware, right? So we've got to make sure we do that, very smartly. But those are the types of things we are wrestling with right now. But I think it's going to take all of us, really rethinking the trust fund, rethinking our priorities. They may come back very similar, but I think we need to have an open discussion on all those.
I just want to underscore the importance of considering value capture. And again, it's a way to pay for the things we need that doesn't involve increasing any fees on anyone, anywhere. It's an approach, a financing approach that was used in Washington, D.C. to rebuild one of the latest metro station, and I think it was the Gallaudet station, but leveraging their existing transit-oriented development, or TOD investments, in the area where the station was planned. All of the sales tax, or some portion of the sales tax revenue in the station area, is directed into operations or whatever it is the transit system needs. I think it's just, I'm on a policy committee, I'm on the health committee, I'm not on appropriations like some of my colleagues who get to write checks. But I just feel that it's so important to highlight that as an option. We have, I don't know how many transit stations in our city. We've got the subway line stations, we've got the light rail stations, and at none of them do we have retail outlets like you see in New York or in Philly, little kiosks where we used to call them newspaper stands. I don't know what we call them now. Cell phone charging, I don't know, stands. But places where folks, small business people, it's another opportunity to leverage economic development, equitable economic development, small business people in the stations, around the station area, selling things, providing services, generating sales tax revenue. What are we doing with that sales tax revenue? Why not put it back into improving the station, or funding operations, or salary increases for bus operators, or anything else we need? Workforce training for folks in all of the different mode areas. We have to be creative, and I really just am underscoring this, partly to be a nudge about it, but partly to get everybody familiar with the idea of thinking creatively about financing. Because I think our shared goal, I heard all of you say, is to really deliver for the people of the city, region, and state. And that takes courage, and it takes creativity in this climate. So just know that you have at least one member of the legislature willing to support you in doing that. At least one, maybe two. Okay, well, two. So thank you for letting me
Thank you so
go on.
much, of course.
Anything else? Okay.
Yeah. All right. Del Gaston, I know you went to the back. Do you have any questions? You're good? Okay. All right. So at this point, I think we've covered all of our delegates, so we'll go to our city council. Councilman Ramos? There you go.
I have to stand, otherwise nobody can see me. Good afternoon, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate everything you're doing for our state, for our city. I have 3 questions. One is, first I have to start off by saying, do not, and under any circumstances, take HUR away from us. Under any circumstances. HUR has been a very important source of revenue for us, particularly now that we're seeing the increase.
It'll turn green.
Oh, good. I'll repeat it then. That would be wonderful. So I was saying that HUR is extremely, extremely important for the city. As you know, the effort to get increased HUR funding came not just from Baltimore City, but from MACO. This was a very major, major initiative by all of us. We are using that first tranche of money to do a lot of projects in our city. I will brag and say in my district in particular, and I'm grateful for that. We need it. And I realize that there may need to be formula changes as we electrify and all of that. But don't do that in the next 4 years because we want that increase, and we will continue to work with MACO to make sure that we have that. I mean, again, Baltimore was, as the mayor had said, we were lacking that revenue for so long that we are really behind, not just in our traffic calming projects, but in just our basic maintenance. So I'll back you up, whatever you need to make sure that we still maintain HUR for our city. I think that's extremely important. The second thing is Director, and maybe for any of you, as you know, we are going through, and as the city administrator knows, we are going through a lot of transformation in our city, which is really great. I talk a lot about addressing vacant properties and making sure that we're rehabbing our vacant properties or demolishing, but also increasing the number of people who live here as a result. And to do that, we're going to need good, solid transit to make sure that people have those assets in the neighborhoods that need it most. And so, Director, I know that you have talked about a little bit about this, but you know, we definitely need, you know, that thinking, and I think we talked about it with the West Baltimore Mark, et cetera, but also just in basic service so that people know that they can rely on the MTA. And so you and I talked during MACO conference about more hiring and other things, and I was just curious how that's going to increase service reliability.
Thank you. So we've been really focused over the past year plus on hiring. The nationwide operator shortage has definitely impacted us. And a huge thank you to Secretary Wiedefeld. He came in and I said, hey, we need more money and more pins for operators. And he said yes. And so we have increased the wages with the, I see our ATU partner here, in partnership with the union. So we've decreased the time that it takes to get to top rate. So we're now hiring at like that third year rate, which is much higher than some of our competitors, which has allowed us to increase that. So we have quadrupled the number of applications that come through. We've also doubled up on our training classes, so we're able to get people through more quickly. So our reliability, it's not where I want it to be yet, but our percent of service delivery has been steadily increasing over the past year. So, you know, it was about 90% every day, and now we're on most days above 95%. So again, I want that 99. We're not where we need to be, but making slow and steady progress to get it there.
And like I said before, use us as partners to try to get the word out about the opportunity to work for the MTA. So, you know, we'll be happy to do that. So thank you.
So actually we're having a hiring event this coming Saturday, October 28th at our Northwest Bus Facility. I will make sure Melissa sends you all information to send out to your constituents.
That'd be perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And then my last question is for MBA. I do have to say I've noticed the great service that is provided when I had to get my license renewed. Monica was my person who, she was amazing. I was in and out of there in 10 minutes. It was crazy. So thank you for that. I appreciate, I did make my appointment ahead of time, so that does help. But I don't know if you're the one who would answer this question or somebody else here. We have a major issue in Baltimore City related to Virginia tags that could be fraudulent, may not be fraudulent, but we have overabundance of folks with Virginia tags that I'm sure are not from Virginia. But we know that Virginia's laws until recently were such that they didn't need insurance, they weren't as strict as ours. And that's raising everybody's insurance rates. That's causing a lot of problems when people have accidents. And so we're just trying to figure out what to do. And, you know, when we talk with BPD, it's like, well, we've got to talk to Virginia. Okay, well, who's talking to Virginia and what's actually happening? So, again, I don't know if that's your department or how we should address it. Obviously, maybe our delegates and senators have to take some action as well. But we're really seeing this increase, and it's affecting all of us.
No, I agree. I appreciate you bringing up the issue, and especially in Baltimore City, I've seen those signs, Virginia tags. So our investigative division has actually been working on that and reaching out to those numbers and making sure it's not folks who are licensed businesses in Maryland that are encouraging folks to get registered out of state. We've also been in touch with in Virginia, it's the Department of Motor Vehicles to see if we could actually get a list, because the way it works is the Virginia law, in addition to their insurance requirements being different, they actually allow anybody to register a vehicle regardless of where they reside. And so even though there is a legal requirement in Maryland to register your car here when you move within 60 days as a requirement, Virginia will legally allow you to register and title that vehicle in Virginia. So we're trying to work with them to share some information, because unfortunately we do believe that people are using that lack of requirement, I should say, in their law to get around insurance violations and other payments that they need to be making to the state of Maryland. So reach out to my colleague. I will say my colleague in DC has also reached out to Virginia, so I think they're hearing it from several sources. But obviously, it's also a revenue generator for them because those are people who would not otherwise be registering and titling their vehicle in the state. So it is a large issue, definitely on our radar, and we're trying as best we can to address it from an administrative process anyway.
If there's anything we can do to assist, whether it's, getting stories of people who've been in crashes that now can't do the insurance claim, or whether it's, whatever you need, we definitely get a lot of complaints about it. So just count us in as a partner.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
All right, Councilman Dorsey?
I hate to pull you back up to the podium. Councilwoman Ramos has bookended her comments with two thoughts I'd like to tie together: HUR and tags on vehicles from outside of Baltimore City. HUR is distributed based on the number of vehicles registered in each jurisdiction in the state proportionally. In addition to all the out-of-state licensed vehicles that we have through these, I'll just say, nefarious means, we have I think a disproportionate number of higher education institutions here in Baltimore City relative to other jurisdictions in the state. So we attract in a lot of students and people who end up living here long-term but never registering their vehicle in Baltimore City. And so we're bearing the impacts of those vehicles in Baltimore City. As my friend Tavon here behind me knows, we have plenty of laws on the books that are really hard for us to enforce through basic parking enforcement means. And I would love it if the state could provide us any guidance at all on how to actually uphold the law that vehicles be registered within 60 days, because I don't know any practical means. We have other laws, local and state, that basically say, if you do this thing and you are still doing this thing even 48 hours later, then you are in violation of a certain law. And yet it's hard for us to make the legal establishment that this thing that happened here 48 hours ago is the same thing that is still happening here 48 hours later, let alone a 60-day gap like that. I would really like it if MDOT and the state could provide us any real practical guidance on how to partner or, independent of the state, be an enforcement mechanism so that we know that we are getting the HUR that we are due based on the vehicles that are actually living here in Baltimore City.
Yeah, definitely happy to continue the conversation. I agree it's challenging. So the state in the law offers a tax credit on your vehicle, so you're not double paying taxes when you move to Maryland. And so that's part of the enticement to do it within 60 days, because after 60 days, you don't get that tax credit. But for us, even as a state agency, it's difficult to determine exactly when you move to Maryland. And so we use, when did you get your license? Obviously, you know at that point you're in Maryland, right? Or any other independent indicator we can, so we can share that information in terms of what we use for that 60-day window to determine who's eligible to get that tax credit. But happy to continue the conversation because we understand the importance of the HUR and making sure the credit is there.
I appreciate that. Just on tax credits, we have tax credits that try to entice Baltimore City police officers and Baltimore City fire officers to live in Baltimore City, but even a $2,500 annual property tax isn't enough to get them to actually move into Baltimore City willingly. And Baltimore City has extremely high auto insurance rates, and so I wonder whether these tax credits that are supposed to entice somebody to register their vehicle in Baltimore are enough to entice them to take on the additional burden of cost that comes with actually having to pay insurance at Baltimore City car insurance rates.
Understood.
Thank you. I got a couple other things. First, I'll say I am very appreciative and full support of Delegate Lewis here in saying how traumatizing past CTP hearings have been. So I'm very thankful to everybody who's here, and just including everybody behind me, not just everybody in front of me. This is an amazing turnout, a great showing of support and camaraderie. I'll say it is not because Holly is a constituent in my district that I think she is just so wonderful an administrator for MTA. And it's probably also not that she is such a great booster for the system and is very visible in her daily usership of the system. That is extremely reassuring, I want to say, for people who believe in buses as a way we can get around our city. And so I want to thank Holly for being amazing in so many ways. It's not those reasons, though. It's that she's actually doing an amazing job running the MTA. I'm going to ask you, because Holly and I share the same bus line, what is the frequency of the 54 at like its highest frequency and then also its like more common frequency? 10, 12 minutes at its highest, but that's for like pretty limited times. Yeah, peak periods. Peak periods, the 54 that runs down Hartford Road is at 10 or 12 minute headways. A half a century ago, they were 5-minute headways during normal hours and 2-minute headways at peak hours. So we are at least 5 times slower than we were a half a century ago, essentially prior to the dominance of the age of the automobile. And so my next thought is really about what we need to do in order to even make it possible for us to get somewhere closer to that level of frequency, meaningfully back to that level of frequency. Because that's a time at which many more middle-class families were relying on transit and saving a whole lot of money on automobile ownership than what we face today. And it's a reality that cars pose an impediment to buses having that level of frequency on our city streets when they're operating in a competitive environment between buses and cars. And so the obvious solution to that is the same as it has always been, to get the cars out of the way so that the bus can be, as Holly said, frequent, reliable, and easy to use. These are 3 sides of the same coin. They're the same thing. They mean the same thing. And so can MDOT assist the city, or how can we partnership to even have a grasp of the scale of investment that would be necessary on the city's end to get the cars out of the way, to do more, to create dedicated bus infrastructure to the scale that is needed in order for the system at large to have the level of frequency that we had a half a century ago, to where we're talking about 5- and 2-minute headways on peak hours.
Yes, short answer, can we partner with you on that? Absolutely. We're gearing up to do, I don't have a name for it yet, but somewhat similar to what Washington Metro has done with their Better Bus Network, so kind of putting out a visionary bus network, right? What could the network be, and what does it take to get there, right? I will tell you right now, one of our biggest constraints is, we can add some more operators and buses, but we're out of space at our divisions, so we need a 5th bus division, right, to continue to add those things. We have identified where we have bottlenecks on the city streets and where we could use, queue jumps or bus bulbs or dedicated bus lanes, whatever that is. And so the idea is we're going to put all this together, get some feedback on that plan. And so the goal is to kind of roll that out early next year and get feedback from the public on it.
And so is this going to include a sense of the scale
Yes.
of cost to do this system-wide?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, cost and timeline, right? Like, we cannot get another bus division right now. You have to buy property, you have to build. It takes a lot of time to get there. And so what does it take to get there, and what are the steps that we're going to outline that allow us to do that?
Great. I'll note, we have a national best practices-based complete streets law here in Baltimore City that is keeping us in a position of being competitive for federal grants to make these kind of improvements. And it is really important that we all are really on the same page about the importance of that law and our commitment to complete streets as our mentality, as our guiding light for how we think about the use of space in the city in order to intentionally prioritize buses and vulnerable road users. And so my last thought here is on how we go a step further to pursue mode shift. Last time I brought up mode shift in a CTP, I was told I don't believe in social engineering. But that is what we are doing, right? Anytime we build a road and space for cars, we are socially engineering for the dominance of automobiles, and we have other tools to engineer for outcomes of mode shift. And e-bikes are a real game changer, not only to make a personal ownership of a means of transportation more attainable for people in Baltimore City, 50% of whom do not have access to a car at any given time, largely because of the affordability or non-affordability of individual automobiles, but also as a viable alternative to cars for those who would use other means, like Delegate Young down here, who recently got himself an e-bike, is now biking 8 miles all the way from almost the county line into downtown Baltimore City on his e-bike and not showing up sweaty as a result of it. MDOT, I would love for the state to really robustly support the kind of e-bike purchase rebates that other states and local jurisdictions have enacted over the last several years. There are many of them across the country that can serve as a model, or at least just as an example. I'll also say Mayor Scott has made a commitment to putting an e-bike rebate in place before the end of FY24 already. We want that to be as robust as possible. And we want the state to kick in to help us make that more available for as many people as we can. Thank you.
Anyone have a comment on that, or? No?
I think the correct answer is amen.
Okay, all right. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Any more questions from the, yes, Delegate Young. There's a microphone right behind you.
There we go. So one quick question is, technology, any advancements in technology that we see coming. Just want to know where those conversations are. I was researching Project Greenlight from Google, which is supposed to leverage technology into existing infrastructure to reduce emissions by looking at traffic patterns. Thinking about also, how we can use cameras on our buses to identify maintenance needs and 311 requests. Are those conversations happening? I mean, I know it's still early in the implementation of those type of technologies, but are those conversations or is that research happening? And if so, where?
Yeah. They're actually happening at both highways and in the transit agency, particularly on the highway side, thinking about, in effect, smart highways, right? How do you maximize that without building more lanes? And technology is moving so quickly, that I think that is an opportunity. I don't know, Will, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the specifics?
Sure. Thank you for the question. We have a lot of team members that are involved in different technology areas. One example is with our traffic signals. We're leveraging increased use of AI and trying to there's different levels of technology with camera systems and all of that. So we're absolutely trying to deploy them, utilize that as part of what's called Transportation Systems Maintenance and Operations, or TSMO projects. We have a number of those in the CTP that are trying to advance technology throughout the state. And also on our operational side, I just reviewed notes today about our storm system, which is a tool that'll communicate information during inclement weather to help motorists know which roads are clear, how to be able to get around. Our trucks all have automated vehicle location systems that we tie into the website to be able to communicate live on what the roadway conditions are, and they have the weather monitoring systems right on the trucks. And so we're deploying, I could go on a lot of different areas of technology, but we're absolutely leveraging that to the extent possible. And a lot of our team members at State Highway are on various technology-focused national committees to help stay current on what's available and how we can start to deploy those. We also receive federal money every year in our research and policy team to be able to do new research to look at how we can integrate some of these technologies into our existing operations. So hopefully I answered your question. Again, there's a lot of areas with technology, software, leveraging GIS more. I could go on, but I think we're doing a lot there. Thank you.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I would just like to say thank you, Mr. Secretary, and to your entire MDOT team. Many of you all I've worked with personally throughout the years and have great relationships with, so it's great to see you all. Looking forward to continuing to work with you all and serving this great city. So thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.